This is not a destination. You're probably able to figure that much out, if I'm being completely honest. This is the Flying Scotsman, and I bring up the Flying Scotsman for a very good reason. It is nearly impossible to find any destinations that work with the Flying Scotsman. The problem being is that he's too damn long. So what do you do? Well, one of two options. Either A, you run them on your layout without the second water cart, that is this piece here. Or, you track down one of the few destinations that, intentionally or not, is designed to work with the Flying Scotsman. Now today's video is not just about this destination, it's about several that I've picked up over the last couple of weeks. There's also another two that are coming, but I really want to save them for a separate video. The destination in question is, of course, this beautiful thing. This is the transfer table, and it is a little bit of a rare destination, or at least somewhat hard to find, especially complete. It was only produced for 2 years as far as we know, 99 and 2000, and look, as someone who studies codes and other bits and pieces, I can't find any evidence that it went any longer than that. It is quite a rare and hard to find destination, and there is most certainly no 2001 box for this guy, so 99 to 2000 seems about right. These are pretty hard to find, especially in Australia. The biggest problem is being complete. Look, these signs here are pretty standard things, and honestly they appear on so many other destinations that if your item came without them, I wouldn't even be that concerned. In fact, there's another one that we're going to look at later that uses these same signs. No, the main piece that makes this hard to get complete is this little fence gate here. Now, I don't know for the life of me why why this piece here is removable. Okay, like every other destination you see with one of these lattice pieces, it's either screwed in or, you know, it's glued in. It's the fact that this isn't, and the fact that so many are missing it, kind of linked together. Now, if you've never heard of the transfer table, I wouldn't blame you. It is one of those niche destinations that typically gets lost to sort of the annals of time. But it is kind of cool. To show you how it works, I'm going to load Scotsman up here on this ramp. Now, the transfer table, as you can see, has a little spirally plastic, I guess, kind of screw piece in the middle, and some wooden dowel on either side. Now, on the back of the transfer table is this knob here. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Is this knob here. Now, when you twist this knob, this is the cool part. Oh, there goes my laptop. The entirety of this base moves. Now, I think the really cool part about this whole accessory is the fact that it is huge. This thing is about the same length as a piece of bumpy track, which kind of gives you a hint about what's going to come up next. And it really is brilliant for that. I mean, this piece can fit Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle all on the middle of it. You can fit the entirety of Scotsman. You can fit like any other destination, like any other item that is this long. You would fit a couple of express coaches in a pinch. Now, why discontinue it? Well, the very good reason is the fact that this is extremely niche. The need for this on a layout is so minimal. It's really hard to use. Now, I have, but the biggest challenge with it is, honestly, not actually its length. It's the width. Fitting this onto a layout with all this extra width is really challenging. And when you consider that this performs the same function as the long flyover piece, then the point of this seems kind of minimal, to be honest. That's probably why it only lasted 2 years. That, you know, you can't really make one of these long enough. I said this is long, and that's really good, but you can still only really transfer a train and a couple pieces of rolling stock. I think as its own thing, it's kind of cool. And I mean, it can be used to easily split two sides of a layout in half. Like you can have like a circle, another circle, and have this in the middle. That's kind of cool. But again, We can see why it was discontinued. Now, prices for these guys are not great, I'll be honest. A good, complete one will cost you about $100, 100 Australian. Boxed, I've seen them for 200, for 300. You know, they're not common. I paid, I think, just under 100 for mine. It was a local one, and that's really rare. A lot of these you have to import from the States, and that means that the price just goes up because this thing weighs a decent amount, at least a couple of kilos. Still, a cool destination. If I was giving you any advice, if you find one cheaper that's missing these, but has the red piece, go for it, because again, these were sold for so many years separately, in both before and after this came out, in various other destinations, that it wouldn't be a complete loss. I just got lucky and found a complete one for a very good price. Alright, we'll say goodbye to Scotsman for the moment. And we'll start looking at some other weird destinations. This is one that I feel like everyone knows exists, but everyone forgets exists at the same time. This is not a destination, or should I say a piece of track, that really comes up in discussion much. In fact, what is this? A lot of people say, oh, it's a crossing. Well, technically not. This is called the highway crossing. The highway crossing. Now, I'm confused. What makes this a highway crossing? It's just a crossing to me. Now, I don't know. It's one of those destinations where you really wonder, A, why it was sold for like 3 or 4 years. I think that the wiki list this is 95 to 2000, which again, believable. Whether they actually made it up to 2000 or whether people just saw it on shelves till 2000 or it was in the yearbook till 2000, that's up for debate, okay? Some things were in the yearbook really late and they weren't being sold at all. Although they probably likely would have still been on shelves. This wasn't really a destination I wanted. I'll be completely honest. I wasn't actually that interested in it. You know, I sort of knew it existed, knew it was kind of weird, but that was about it. But it came up for sale at the same time as something else, for around $20, $25. And TWR Ryan 86 mentioned he had a spare box for it, and I went, you know what? Sod it, I'll go get it. And I did. Do I like it? Well, it kind of suffers from the same problem as the transfer table. It is just too wide. I don't know where you'd use this on a layout, other than on like a sleepy branch line kind of setting. Which kind of makes you question the highway crossing part. I mean, like, I guess the road has to be the bigger part of this, but why? It all feels weird. This feels like a good destination if it was a double-tracked piece. And that would make it really neat, really, like, different. But as it stands, it's just a single piece of track running through the center. And it makes the whole destination feel odd because it's so wide. Do I recommend it? Look, prices for these things vary. I'm not 100% sure how much they go for. I think anywhere from 10, 15 to 40, 50 Australian dollars. And I mean, I wouldn't pay much for this. Again, same as before. You can find one without the signs, go for it. I mean, but I honestly wouldn't recommend this destination that much. It's just fine. Is it even a destination? I mean, what counts as a destination? I mean, this is just a piece of track, realistically. Next up is a destination that I've kind of wanted for the better part of 15 to 20 years. I remember seeing a lot of really early YouTube videos and going, that's kind of cool. I think maybe a early adaptation from someone who bowled out. Can't remember who exactly. But it's this. This is the original Knapford station. And, you know, I mean, this feels like one of those destinations where it really got better with age, all right? What I mean by that, sorry, that's a weird way to phrase it. What I mean more is that it got better every time they did it. To me, this is the worst Knapford station they ever made, except maybe the one made by Mattel for wood. Okay, maybe we'll say that one's worse. And then the Mattel one's not great. Anyway, the point is that this is probably the second worst Knapford station they ever made. Because it's just not big enough. Like, on one hand, people will say, well, it is actually quite nice to have a smaller station if you have a smaller layout, and I will agree. But I think as a Knapford, station, it fails. This does not scream a big, imposing station. It just doesn't. I actually only just recently acquired a second of the mid-2000s Knapford stations. And what I will say about that is that it is a brilliant station, and I can see why people get 2 or even 4 of them to make a massive station. The reality is also the price. I paid, I think, $100 for this, and that is a killer deal, even with the damage. But you can find mid-2000s Knapfords for a similar price. And the reality is $100 is pretty much bargain basement for one of these. A lot of the time, you're going to be paying closer to $150, $200. By that point, just buy the mid-2000s one. It's more common, and honestly, it's better. I bought this partly for nostalgic value, and partly because, and this is what some people use this for as well, I think this is a good Tidmouth. I think it's good as a smaller double track station, like Tidmouth. I just don't think it works as a Knapford. There are also 2 versions of this, and I'll be honest, if I was really going for one, I was kind of convinced I wanted the 4-pole. Now, what you can see here is that there are actually 6 poles to this station, alright? And this is what we call the 6-pole version. And this came out in 1995, and was discontinued about 1997. And for those last couple of years, 97, 98, I don't actually know how late this guy went. I don't know if anyone really does. Those last couple of years there, it became a 4-pole version. But you know what? The 6-pole is growing on me. It actually looks really quite nice. I think I'd still like a 4-pole version just for collector's sake, but I don't hate this. I really don't. There's some nice stuff. I mean, the seats are kind of nice. I like the roof. It's very glass. Like the later ones have a lot more, like, I guess, green painted. Like the design look like the steel girders, and that probably looks better. But there's something so aeronautical, sort of, about this. It reminds me like of a airport, I guess, which is kind of weird. Or it could work as a nice airport station, I guess. Other than that, there's not really much to say about this guy. It's just okay, you know. I think if you can find one cheap, under $100, it's a good buy. I wouldn't really chase after one, to be honest, though. I'm very content with this. I nearly bought a 4-pole not long ago, but it was missing a chair. And that's the other thing. If it's missing, I think mine might actually be a bit wrong. I think maybe they've made some of these poles. If it's missing the poles, who cares, to be honest. Like, just cut some pieces of dowel, call it a day. No one really gives a hoot. If it's missing any, like the roof, the base, or the seats, that's when I'd probably pass on it. Unless you can buy like 2 and make 1, but even then, just buy a complete one. Other way, kind of cool. Now, for the last destination, I'm going to have to go grab something to sort of give some clarity here. Now, this is not the destination we're looking at, but this is a piece of what is called bumpy track. Apologies. If you've never seen a piece of bumpy track, it's a kind of cool, kind of neat piece of track that was made for eons. Like I feel it started in 2000 and they didn't discontinue it until 2012. It's saying that you can't get it in like a 2012 box. Like you can get it in a box that's dated 2012. It'll be in the style of boxes you would have seen in the mid-2000s. Just kind of how it went. So this is just a typical piece of bumpy track. Now, in the early 2000s, there was a couple of sets that were released for the Magic Railroad in promotion with it. There was the big movie set, and there was also a much smaller set. Okay, this was the Muffle Mountain set. Now, it came with a big Muffle Mountain, of which I think I have 2. And it also came with a piece of bumpy track. But this bumpy track was painted gold. Now, this set in of itself, in Australia at least, is actually kind of common. You see quite a lot of the bumpy track for sale. Or at least the clickety-clack version. We'll get to that in a second. Now, a lot of it is fairly worn. I mean, like, this is a pretty bad example. I got both of these in lots. I believe this one was from Bundy, and as you can see, it is definitely showing its age, but it's definitely a gold piece of bumpy track. This might have also been a lot somewhere. This one's in a lot better nick, and you can sort of see that the colours are not necessarily the same. Now, I said these were the clickety-clack versions, and that's because that set, the Muffle Mountain set, was for a very small amount of time produced in traction rail, i.e. the non-clickety-clack track. However, this set is, as I said, extremely rare. It is very hard to find any pieces. Now, the set in of itself doesn't include much exclusive. The two main pieces that are traction rail are the Muffle Mountain and the bumpy track. Everything else is common enough to make the set up. Which brings us along to this. This is a very, very rare piece of track. Damn near impossible to find. This is not in the best nick. Okay, it's not perfect. But considering how rare this piece actually is, it is amazing that I was able to find one at all. And for an absolute steal, I paid, before postage, $10 for this. That's cheaper than I'd usually be able to get this track for. It was the same seller who was selling me the Highway Crossing. I think actually even the same seller who sold me the Knapford. They just kept accepting my ridiculous offers. The Knapford was like 105 and I offered 80 and they accepted it. The funniest part though is this was up to 2 months and no one bought it. And that's because this is an extremely rare but also an extremely niche piece. You need to know what you're looking for. And I'm like really ecstatic to own this. I'd love to own the Muffle Mountain too. And that'll probably prove to be a little bit easier. Destinations tend to be a bit more common than the track. This kind of stuff gets lost and basically tossed or donated. The destinations seem to linger around in homes for a bit longer. But this is a really cool piece. Now, for most of this video, I've given you a bit of a rough price guide, but I can't tell you how much this is worth because really, they don't come up enough. And so many people don't know what this is that it kind of just gets forgotten about. I'd say at least $50. I mean, I think $50 is a fair thing to say. If we say the other track in good nicks, 20, 25, and this nick is basically worthless, then we can say this is about a $50 piece in really good condition. In this condition, maybe 30, 40. But really, it's one of those pieces where the price doesn't matter. It's the rarity and it's the difficulty to get. It's probably on a similar level, I'd say, rarity-wise to the Roadway Switches. It's a very bold claim. But they're both quite hard to find and limited to sets that were only either sold in certain regions or were very expensive. Alright, and that's all my destinations for now. The next couple are coming, and I've sort of been a bit delayed on videos, but, you know, I've just sort of been piecing things together. I'm starting to build a bit more of a layout, a bit more of a collection, and I feel like I'm enjoying it more than I used to. I feel like I restrained myself for a long time to post 2001 items, and now I'm sort of allowing myself to get reinvested in some of the older items that I've always kind of wanted. In saying that, there's still a lot of post-2000 items I'd like, and I'm going to sort of start slowly tracking them down piece by piece. But either way, thank you for watching, and bye for now.